I'd like to call this December 12th, 2024 Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Anagnastu, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Ms. Stachek?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausen.
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We always like to remind ourselves of our strategic priorities at the beginning of a meeting. Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan, which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. And hopefully you've noticed that things look a little different, and we have a great crowd. And I think that is a good way to highlight the priorities of our students and the parents that brought them here tonight. We do have a few agenda changes. We are going to remove an action item, the Sarar HVAC project, and we do have some adjustments to item 3, the Kinsner HVAC project. With that, I think it's appropriate that we start our meeting with recognition, and I turn it over to Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. Well, we've got a very special treat today. As you can see, we've got a large group of talented students in front of us. So under the direction of Ms. Bravo, we have the middle school chamber strings that are going to start our meeting off with some beautiful music. So take it away.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Bravo. Before you, you see the Strongsville Middle School Chamber Strings Ensemble. We are very, very grateful to have this opportunity to play a couple carols for you, and I'm going to let my first violinist introduce himself and tell him a little bit about our ensemble.
Dear esteemed board members, my name is Vihan Yanamantra. I'm an 8th grader and I play the violin. Sitting before you today is the SMS Chamber Strings. Today, we will display our musical capabilities, created and formed through years of hard work and determination for you today. This can only be done through my dedicated peers and our wonderful director, Ms. Bravo. Many great people, such as Mahatma Gandhi, have all said that love is the strongest force on earth, and they can be seen as right. Love can cause war, deceit, and strife, while it can also cause cooperation, peace, and unity. As a Chamber Strings group, our love is in the form of our music, which we play and perform to the best of our ability. Think for a second, someone or something you love. How do they make you feel? Why do they make you feel that way? We want our music to pose the same questions to you. If we are playing a dark and heavy piece, how do we make you feel tense and frightened? If we are playing a light and happy piece, how do we make you feel elated and joyful, as if all your worries have floated away? But to do this, there's only one way. To do this, pure dedication, determination, and a motivation to the best of the best must be captured. That is why I love SMS Chamber Strings. It is a place for like-minded individuals like me and all of my peers to meet to pursue a common goal and dream. It is a place where we can hunt the notions of improvement and growth, and where we can see and celebrate the fruits of our labor. All this isn't easy. It must come from a deep feeling inside of passion and appreciation for the art of music. And today, I hope we can show this passion to you. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy our performance.
Thank you.
Charlie Ramage. I am in 8th grade and I play the cello in our Chamber Strings ensemble. The Chamber Strings group is a huge opportunity for us to be a part of. We are an audition-only group and we come to school every early Wednesday and Friday for practice. With the help of our amazing director, Ms. Bravo, we are able to do so many opportunities that strengthen our musical careers. I'm so glad to be in Chamber Strings because I, along with everyone else in this group, love to play our instruments and want to learn more about them. I'm so grateful for this group of amazing people and amazing musicians. This whole experience has changed my appreciation for music and has allowed me to make so many good memories. So this music program is a lot for these people, something that they look forward to doing. Music helps us improve not just in music, but in every aspect of our lives, whether it be academically, athletically, and how we treat one another. Once again, this music program has shaped who we are as people, and I don't think I would be the same without it. Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Bravo, for this amazing opportunity.
Because we just want to tell you how amazing you guys are. Can we give them another round of applause? So, you know, I don't know if you know this about me, but I didn't play a string instrument, but I was a trumpet player. So I actually went to college, and I was a jazz musician for a long time, and I played in a lot of groups, and I was in 7th and 6th and 8th grade one time and played in a lot of groups. And I can tell you what, they never sounded as good as you guys. You guys are really amazing how you play together. And one of the things that I think is awesome is how well you play as a group. right? Because each of you, I'm sure, does a great job individually on your instrument, but the awesome thing about being a part of a group or an ensemble or a band is that it's not about the individual, it's about you working together, right? So just like in music, just like in life, as you said when you went up there, sometimes you gotta take the lead, right? Sometimes you gotta be the louder instrument. And sometimes you gotta take a supporting role. And by learning how to work together and say each one of our individual pieces comes together and creates this beautiful music, that's something that's going to last with you forever. So on behalf of the board and the district, we just want to let you know how proud we are of you and the work that you do and the passion and the dedication you have to make the beautiful music that you shared with us tonight. And I want to thank your teacher for her dedication and her passion and the work that she does. I know how much she cares about each and every one of you and the program and the outstanding orchestra that we have from 5th grade on up to 12th grade. And we want to make sure that stays moving forward. And that's why the Board of Education last year committed to creating this supplemental to make sure the chamber strings at the middle school was a thing that we had in our district. So, Mr. Nichol, I'm sure you always have some wonderful thoughts to share with the students, but on behalf of myself and our administration and our teachers and staff, we're very proud of you and a wonderful job.
I will, on behalf of the board, thank everyone. I wanted to ask Ms. Bravo if she could go to the podium, because I think we have a few questions for you. This is known as a pop quiz.
Sure.
And I know you're going to do very well. Can you tell us a little bit more about the program?
Absolutely. So for our chamber strings students, these are all 7th and 8th grade students at the middle school. They have auditioned for this group specifically to be here, so they are extra dedicated. Lots of them take private lessons outside of school, and they are all involved in our regular 7th and 8th grade orchestra as well. They are dedicated. They come in on Wednesday and Friday mornings at 7 a.m., bright and early, and they work really hard, 45 minutes each time. We only meet twice a week, which is really fantastic, which is what they get to be able to do. And we have a lot of opportunities for performances, such as tonight. And recently we played at the mall, and we do a lot of competitions in the spring, so they have a lot of opportunity to play more challenging music, something that we don't necessarily get a chance to play in regular orchestra, so it gives them an outlet for something a little bit more challenging.
So I just, again, want to reiterate how lovely it was
Thank you.
to have all of these students decide they have nothing better to do on a Thursday evening at 7 p.m. than to share their talent with us. Their time with us was just lovely. I am very fond of talking about the time that our students put into things, and these are worthwhile endeavors. There's so many things that young people today can spend their time doing that isn't necessarily what we as parents or as citizens in the community want. But this is an example of young people doing really good stuff and spending hours doing it to be able to bring us a lovely, joyful 20 minutes at the beginning of our board meeting. The one thing I want to thank our parents, because none of you drive yet, and so we know the work it takes for the parents to bring them here, and we appreciate that.
And rent and buy instruments.
I want to,
Yes.
all of the commitments, but what is really satisfying for us as a board and for us as a district is to see these students perform so well and to see the parents so proud of their students, and it's evident here. And the last thing I was going to say is we do have to discuss our calendar next year, and one of the things we need to discuss is where we have our meetings. And Ms. Bravo, congratulations, you've started a new tradition. However, I don't think we're going to do it in this room next year. So congratulations to everyone, and thank you for helping us start our board meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
You guys were wonderful.
Maybe next year, Dr. Ryba can have a trumpet solo in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I You have a whole year to practice.
Great, yes. It's only been 15 years.
Well, they did that pretty good. Yeah, they did.
I know, right?
They were awesome. Awesome. I can't believe that was middle school. I
Yeah, that was
know.
wonderful, wasn't it?
That was middle school. They're awesome.
Yeah. Maybe she's outside.
Well, that cleared out the room.
Dr. Ryba, do you want to bring up our next recognition?
I do. Is Hannah here somewhere in the? Where's Hannah? Oh, there you are. Hannah, did you see Coach Spilker out there at all? There you are, in the back. Well, I'm glad we found you in the crowd of people to give you your due recognition. So it's my honor to turn it over to Coach Spilker to recognize an outstanding cross-country athlete from this fall.
Hi, my name's Angela. I'm the girls cross country coach, and this is Hannah Jika. Thank you guys for having us tonight to honor her incredible season this year. So Hannah had a huge breakout season this year. She finished in the top 3 in every meet leading up to the state meet with 4 first place finishes. At the state meet, Hannah placed 6th overall and broke our school record with a time of 17:35. Lastly, Hannah was nominated as the Plain Dealers Girls Cross Country Runner of the Year. The article came out a couple weeks ago, and it's just incredible to read and witness everything that Hannah has done so far. Aside from the numbers and running stats, Hannah is overall an incredible athlete to coach. She listens to us and our race plans. She asks us questions, stays calm at the start line, and above all is such a competitor. I'm so excited to see what Hannah can still accomplish because she's only a junior. I'm so proud to be Hannah's coach, and I'm also honored to be a part of this program and to work in this district. Thank you.
So Hannah, before you come around, we would like you to shake your hand and give you a certificate to say how proud we are of you. But as your coach was talking, I did the math of a 17:35. I couldn't even move that fast.
She could beat you.
If I was, like, from here to there, I couldn't move that fast. That is absolutely amazing. And you finished 6th place, was it? I mean, what a unbelievable accomplishment. That's amazing. And just the tremendous amount of work. How many miles did you run on a week, you know? Oh,
Wow.
that's a lot of work.
That's 35
I
more
can't even
miles than I
comprehend.
have.
What do you think about while you're running all those miles?
Yeah, there'd be no talking.
That's even-
Yeah, there'd be no.
There would be no talking, none.
Well, it's good. I'm a music person, Hannah. I do run, but I have to have the music going to keep me going. But that's amazing. So why don't you come up? We'll shake your hands and shake your hand and share our congratulations.
We are so proud of you. Coach, we are so proud of you.
Wait, they're running back because they helped with the chairs.
This is as fast as I can.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So again, Hannah, congratulations, and on behalf of the board, thank you for representing Strongsville so well. And thank you for being a model Mustang for other Mustangs to emulate and as they grow up. And I don't have to worry about you driving home. I'm pretty sure you're going to run home. Thank you. Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. I do have one slip. Shannon Burns. I'm sure you know the drill, Shannon. Name, address, and you have approximately 3 minutes.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Micco. Shannon Burns, 18079 Brick Mill Run at Strongsville. Came tonight to just address the board about the speculation and the potential for a proposed plan for for spending cuts moving forward after the failure of the levy in '24. I felt like the way to best explain my position and my opinion on this would be to just do a quick history of how we got to where we are. We started in 2018 with a levy that was proposed by a different board. I think Mr. Micco was the only one on the board at that point, if I remember correctly. That levy failed, unfortunately. Came back in 2019 with a compromise, a smaller levy. In fact, organization part of Strongsville GOP did, in fact, support that levy in 2019, and that levy did pass. Reflecting back to the 2019 levy, the messaging was very clear, both from the board and from the administration, that that levy was required in order to maintain the status quo of and growth that the schools had, with the 5-year forecast showing modest amount of growth, if any, in the cash reserves. Moving forward after the 2019 levy passed, right into January, February, and I can't remember exactly what time, of 2023, we had privately had conversations with some of the board members and shared some of the concerns we had about the existence of a significant cash surplus since that 2019 levy had been put in place. And that levy, that surplus at that time had grown pretty significantly. I don't think it was quite at 71 million, but it was pretty close to 71 million compared to the 25 or so million we were at in 2019. You know, I think not very closely unrelated, but related. In about March of 2023, this board decided then to move $25 million off of the balance sheet, off of the public reporting as well, into a separate fund geared towards other construction and other potential upgrades and maintenance, and then stopped reporting that as in their standard reporting for cash on hand, which then effectively made it appear like there was 25 million less. And it was always noted, you know, it was never hidden, but it was always noted, but it was, none of the public reporting ever included that. You know, moving forward, our organization reached out and met multiple times with Treasurer Agnostiu, and then ultimately with Superintendent Ribo as well, to make sure that we had the facts, that we had the information correct in the run-up to the 2023 November levy, and identified that we had the actual correct information. In fact, at one point, we even shared, before we put messaging out, we actually shared it with the Treasurer to make sure that our information was accurate. Now, I think there was a couple small things that we identified that were slightly off, and we corrected those before we sent that out. And in 2023, as we all know, that levy failed. And then moving forward, we reached out after that, you know, fairly contentious levy, and attempted to reach with each of the board members. And the response was about the same with all the board members. Well, you can go to the Finance Committee meeting, but, you know, we're not going to meet with you directly. And we felt that wasn't the right move. We wanted to work an opportunity so that we wouldn't fail the voters again, right? So we tried to put together a plan that would work going forward. Ultimately, that meeting didn't happen. So we ended up meeting, reached out to Mr. Agnostiu and Mr. Ribo again, and met with them and shared our concerns about this and what the plan of putting it back on the ballot in March would do. And I think they clearly listened to what we had to say, but no one acted on that, and decided to just put the same levy back up again in March. This was March of 2024, and of course, as we know, that levy then failed again in 2024. It was very clear at that point that the voters had decided that the current plan going forward was not the plan that they wanted. We had multiple conversations after that, and at one point in, I think it was June, several city leaders reached out to me individually. Elected officials, interested community partners, people that have invested significantly in the schools, and said, what's the plan going forward? And I said, well, the board makes the plan. Well, I'm happy to continue to talk, and we did. And through those conversations, determined that they felt that a compromise was in order. There was a best move forward for the city and for the schools. We had a $10 million levy. They felt, and we had agreed, that a $7.5 million levy, a $2.5 million reduction, would be a good choice. Those city leaders, those community members, those people that all of you know very well, reached out to you and the board members, reached out to Mr. Micco, reached out to other board members, and said, including the elected officials, reached out and said, this is a good deal. You should think about doing this. This would be a good move forward for the district. And once again, this was June of '24. That sort of fell on deaf ears. That wasn't discussed in board meetings. Those calls from city leaders weren't discussed or shared. Excuse me. Those calls and those discussions weren't shared publicly, at least. We did have private conversations.
Excuse me, I never got a phone call from anyone.
I'm not certain that
All
all
right,
of them did.
I
know,
just want to clarify that.
Yep.
I never got a phone call from any city leader. ever.
and I don't know exactly who they called.
Just so we're clear, because I don't want people to think that someone called us and we just ignored them. I never got a phone call. I don't know if anyone else here did, but I never received a phone call from anyone, no one. So go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And I don't know. I wasn't part of that.
Just
Yeah.
to be clear,
Yeah,
because
that-
a lot of things have been said that are wrong and out lies. And me, for one, I'm kind of tired of it. So no one ever called me on any of this, none of it. So go ahead.
I mean, it's not a normal practice for the board to respond to public comments, so I know
Well,
that's the policy.
A lot of
but,
this hasn't been normal.
I'll ask your brother if he called you or not. I don't know if he did.
My brother, okay. Okay, go ahead.
But here's the important part, is that in June of '24, we all came to the board meeting, and we found out, and at that point, there was no plan in place. These conversations had yielded nothing. And Mr. Micco did come to one of our organizational meetings and announced that there, in fact, would be a levy being put back up on the ballot in November of 2024. And that levy would be a permanent levy with a small reduction of, $700,000, $600,000 reduction, maybe it was $4. And at that point, we clearly thought, this wasn't a path that's failed the voters. This wasn't something that voters were interested in. And we voiced that concern at the time. Shortly after that, the reappraisal happened in Calgary County. That reappraisal, public reporting, and then we found out later this information was available through the school district's public reporting as well, that the schools would receive $2.4 million more in revenue, not through their fault. Not you didn't make that decision. We as voters didn't make that decision. That's, unfortunately state law, and that's the way it worked. And we were going to have tax increases throughout throughout the city. And we said to the board, we recognize that this changes everything, right? We said, we had all along thought that it would be a great idea to reduce it by half, from a $10 million levy to a $5 million levy. But then once they raised taxes on all of us, we said, and we came right back to this room, to the board meeting in July of '24, and we stood in front of you and we said, we only represent a portion of the voters, but we know right now that there's a lot of voters that are hurting right now, and we know that their taxes were raised and without anyone's decision, and we'd want to come to you and create a compromise that works for everyone right now so that no one else is hurting more. And we said, we gave the number, we said we should create a certain number of mills so that it's just status quo. It would have remained at a $10 million levy, but it would have cut down and eliminated that $2.4 million that was thrust upon all of us without our decision. Board knew that. We said if you vote for this, the current levy that was being proposed, it's going to be a permanent tax increase on all citizens. That fell on deaf ears. The board did not listen to that very, honestly, a very good compromise. It would have given the schools exactly what they would have gotten if the March levy had passed. It would exactly the same amount if the March levy had passed. And they said, no, we are going to stay with the plan we have, which would have increased overall revenue by about $2.1 million. What we didn't get a chance to share after that meeting is that several days after that meeting, I got a call from President Micco. And he said, we talked about an opportunity to change things. Is that opportunity to talk still there? I said, of course it is. Could we reduce this back down to what we talked about to make it revenue neutral? We said, of course we can. That's the right move for the schools. We need to move forward. We need to stop having conversations about this and not have our taxes get raised, let alone having too high of taxes as it is. And he said, well, we're going to do that, but we need to do it. It'll be permanent. And I said, we'd be glad to support the schools in a compromise that makes it revenue neutral. But I don't even think if we supported it, we could get it passed if it took the voters' voice away from them and made it permanent. And the conversation went like this, well, okay, then so what are we going to do next then? You're just going to go and put it up again in May? And he said, no, I would vote to not put it up again and just make cuts. He said $7.5 million in cuts, whatever is necessary. That was sort of how the conversation went at that point. At that point, I
Shannon?
just...
You're past your 3 minutes.
Well, I was interrupted, and I'll take in the past meeting, somebody was given 10 minutes, so I'll finish up quickly here. So the board put this up, and clearly, we ended up with a clear mandate in November. The decision to increase revenue with a permanent tax increase was failed miserably by the school, by the voters. Before I get to my final comment about the future, I do want to point out a couple additional things that I think the school needs to look at before I close with my comments about spending. Throughout this process, throughout this history that I just repeated in front of the board, I believe and I know that the schools have also made a mistake in policy using tax dollars, using school tax dollars to promote the levy in a way that is not justified. It's crossed the line. Producing full-color advertisements that clearly are supportive of the messaging of the levy 4 days out from an election. It may not cross the letter of the law, but obviously the intent of the law. Using the email system to further messaging that is political in nature and not factual in nature is clearly not, maybe not the letter of the law, but not the intent of the law. There is many opportunities I'm happy to share with board members what happens there. Those are not the right types of things that our schools should be doing. They should not be using tax dollars to support the levy. So let me just close with this. Voters told the school board, you have $77 million in cash, and yes, that's an accurate number. We can prove that. Mr. Ignacio would clearly demonstrate that that number might be off by a little bit at this point, but clearly had that, and we started with $25 million in December 31st of 2019. increasing the overall cash balance by over $50 million during that period of time, which is the same amount of money that was taken in from this levy, demonstrating that we did not spend $1 of that levy. And I submit to you today that if you choose, when you have 5 years of taxes sitting in the bank, 5 years of our voters' taxes sitting in the bank, if you choose to make spending cuts and maintain those cash balances, that would be failing to listen to the voters. The voters want you to spend down some of this cash and then come back to them with another plan. This is not, I don't believe at all that this is a reference or a referendum on the quality of our schools. I think our voters actually believe we have great quality schools. I think that we're performing very well, with the exception of this drug policy, which we'll get to at another point. But I think we're performing very well. It does not mean that we should maintain these cash balances. The voters have spoken. If we choose to make spending cuts, propose spending cuts, you'll be failing to listen to the voters and be failing our voters in Strongsville. I appreciate the extra time, and I'm happy to take any questions, or, as always, I'm available. Thank you very much.
So Shannon has commented, it is at least my habit not to comment very often. Public comment is an opportunity to listen more than it is to speak. What I will share is that Shannon and I have had conversations, numerous conversations over years, not just the past 12 months. I'm not going to comment on the conversations. My stance as an individual board member is those conversations were different, but I respect Shannon's characterization of them. What I will say is that the two items that were brought up was potentially breaking the law and using tax dollars to advertise, and potentially breaking the law and using email to advocate for the levy passing. Those are serious concerns. We will follow up on those, and we will respond to those concerns. The other thing I will share is that we need to have a plan, and I would suggest the rest of this meeting, part of that meeting will be the board discussing exactly what that plan is. Does anyone else want an opportunity to say anything? Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. This is part of our consent calendar. Motion to approve the minutes for the November 20th, 2024 regular board meeting, along with motion to approve the November 26th, 2024 special meeting. For both, all audio recordings are a permanent part of the minutes and available upon request. Next on our agenda is treasurer's report. Mr. Anagnostou.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. Just for clarity for the approval of minutes for the second one, since it was a special meeting, there was no recording.
I'm going to get that wrong every single flippin' time. We will return to action consent calendar. Motion to approve the minutes of the November 26, 2024 special meeting. All audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes and are available upon request through the treasurer's office. Video recordings shall be maintained based on the availability of the selected digital online platform. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's part of the consent calendar.
Which one is?
They're both, I was just saying the special meeting, it's not recorded, since it's a special meeting, it's not recorded. That's all I was,
But it was so eventful.
that's all I was saying. Sorry for the confusion. So moving on to treasurer's report.
Please move on.
All right, so I have a few items for your consideration tonight. The first being the financial report for the month ended November 30th, 2024. Just as usual, I'll go over the supplemental report. Both items will be posted to the website. So So the format of this, the same report I've been presenting for the past few years, the format has changed a little bit, where in the front there's a summary, then leads into both revenues by month, by year, and then expenditures, and then comparisons to the 5-year forecast. First items, year-to-date actuals compared to the previous year, just summary. Total revenues are $573,000 higher than the previous year, while expenditures are $1.7 million higher than the previous year through November, and cash balance is about $4 million higher compared to last November. In comparison to the 5-year forecast, which was approved at the last board meeting, revenues are trending about $36,000 higher comparable to the forecast. Expenditures are trending about $15,000 under. The potential net impact is about $52,000. And then cash balances, as of June of last year, we finished within the general fund of $51.3 million, and cash balance is estimated to be about $47.1 if the spending comes out to, if revenues and expenditures are based on the forecasted projection, about $47 million. So kind of with the reduction of the levy, we'll begin, those revenues will be less than starting in January, so we'll be spending down that balance. November revenues compared to last November, about $81,000 higher. We did receive $5,700 in local taxes, and that was due to a land bank sale by the county that we got a small distribution from.
George, can you say that again? It's due to the what?
Oh, a land bank sale by the Cuyahoga County. Yeah, so those are foreclosed homes, vacant properties, they go into a land bank, and then the county moves forward with a sale for those, and we get a portion of those dollars back. State revenues, about $41,000 higher in comparison to last year, which is due to the implementation of the fair funding formula. And then all other revenue was about $33,000 higher compared to last November, and that was due to the Medicaid, partially due to the Medicaid settlement that we received, where last year we received in December, this year we received it in November. Year-to-date, local property taxes were about $421,000 higher in the fall compared to last year, mostly due to collection rate. There was an increase, about 1% in the collection rate. State revenues, it's about $67,000 less year-to-date. It's more due to timing. By the time the year finishes, I'm estimating this number to be about $300,000 more last year based on the funding formula. And then all other revenues about $218,000 higher, which is primarily due to the revenue in lieu of taxes. The TIF revenues were about $300,000 higher. Expenditures are about $209,000 higher for the month compared to last November. Overall year to date, they're about $1.8 million higher, 5%. Salary and benefits, purchase services are both higher, while all other expenditures are less by $418,000. And that decrease is due to, we had a general fund obligation debt that was paid off last year, about $300,000 a year, and that was paid in November. So that's the reason for the decrease there. And in comparison to the 5-year forecast, as mentioned, revenues is trending about $36,000 higher. We did, after the forecast was over, or passed, the state made an adjustment in the funding formula for the transportation line, and we gained about $48,000 there. And overall expenditures are trending about $15,000 less. Any questions? All right, moving on to F2. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the following grants be approved for fiscal year '25. We have 3 SEF grants. SEF grant for theater for $1,000, and that is to for Jeremy Jenkins to teach theater production in his classroom. A ceramics grant for $1,981, and that is for shelving for the I'm not saying this, kilns, is that it? in the art room. And then Kinsner printmaking materials for $285.98. That was for the Kinsner art teacher for these templates for printmaking. And an Aldi Community Cares grant for $500. This was applied for by the FCS teacher at the high school to help with her FSS program. Item F3, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the following student activity program budget, purpose, and goals for fiscal year '25 be approved. A new student-managed student activity account at the high school, Strongsville High School Mental Health Ambassadors, the budget of $2,500. And the advisor is one of the guidance counselors at the high school. New funds for fiscal year '25, the Aldi Community Cares Grant, and then, again, the 200 student-managed student activity account for the mental health ambassadors. Item F5, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the return of advances per the exhibit be approved. These, if you recall, this is an annual return of advances. At the end of, at our last meeting in June for the fiscal year, we advanced dollars from the general fund to federal funds as those funds are reimbursed by the state after they're spent, so they're always in a month arrears. So we have to advance the dollars so we can close out the year as those funds can end in a negative. Once the dollars are received, we're able to advance those dollars back. And in this instance, they take a little longer because the grant year ends September 30th. The state has to open up what's called a final expenditure report. Once that is complete, then they give the rest of the grant dollars back. So we receive those typically in October, November, and then we're able to do the transfer, do the return of the transfer. And lastly, F6, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the amended appropriations be approved, and the changes in the appropriation are based on the SEF grants, the Aldi grant, and the student activities account. That concludes my report. If there's any questions.
Any questions for George? I have a question.
Sure.
Can I do the minutes approvals now?
Yeah.
No.
In the consent calendar.
No.
But I
Next,
do want, as you were reading it, I do want to change the recommended action for that special meeting to take out the audio recordings and video as those were not recorded. So it's not reflected as that. So I'm going to go into the meeting agenda and edit that.
and then we'll highlight it,
Yeah.
the changes when we get to the consent, voting on the consent
Correct.
calendar. Any other questions for George? Next on our agenda is superintendent's report. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. One item under my section is to continue the levy discussion that we've had over the past two meetings. So just as a recap, at our November regular meeting, the board talked about when they would like to go back to the voters for a levy. And there was consensus reached that for this year, there'd not be a levy placed on the May 2024 ballot. So that will take care of the decision for this year, and then obviously the board will have further discussion on that. So there's really two things that the board needs to give guidance on and come to consensus on to give us direction. The first thing is the cash balance policy. Right now, our cash balance, there's two aspects of it. Our cash balance policy says that we must have 90 days cash on hand throughout the entirety of the 5-year forecast. So that means in 28, 29, we'd have to have 90 days cash on hand. So that's something that unless you're doing those significant reductions, we're not going to have 90 days cash on hand in 28, 29. So that's one thing that you have to consider is what is the policy, when do we want to have 90 days cash on hand, et cetera. The other thing is what Ms. Bissell brought up at the last meeting is, do we even want to have that 070 account anymore, that the $25 million that was purposed for construction capital improvement? So those are the two decision points for the cash balance policy in the 070 fund. The last aspect that board needs to provide direction on is our reductions. So the original plan, based on having 90 days cash on hand in the last year of the forecast, was we would need to reduce $3 million starting next school year to make that, and then other reductions thereafter. So, the board's decisions range from make no reductions to $3 million in reductions to everything in between. That direction is needed just on timeline. Cash balance policy and 070 funds, you've got a little time for that. That doesn't need to be decided today. The reductions do based on the timelines that I need to follow to be able to formalize those plans and work with George, and then bring them back to the board for discussion. So we do need to leave this meeting with consensus on reductions. So with that, Mr. Mickel, I'll turn it back over to you.
So I think our public comment today was, if nothing else, timely. And I do think it's one way to look at the conversation. You can't hear me? You can hear me now? And that's, that's funny that we have these conversations, but it's important that the public that are listening at home can hear us, and along with anybody who watches it after the fact. But one of the things that struck me is that what Cameron was alluding to as far as needing time to make it happen, that's all nice language. What it comes down to is we have contractual obligations that if we are going to make cuts in a school district, cuts invariably end up being human resources, end up being individuals and their jobs. And so it's fine to talk about it at a very high level, but I personally don't want to ignore the fact that the decisions we make ultimately become issues for our employees, ultimately become employment issues for our coworkers, our neighbors, and our friends. And so it's nice for us to use that language. Time is of the essence. We need to make these decisions today because Cameron needs to do plans. What that means is he needs to be able to, Jenny needs to be able to plan if we are going to RIF people. And so I want to acknowledge at the beginning of this conversation that while we're having a conversation, and sometimes it's about the 5-year forecast and it's dollars on a spreadsheet, it means something real and it means something critical to the individuals it affects. That doesn't mean we don't have to have these conversations and make these decisions. But at least for me, I want to recognize publicly to those people that we understand the dimension of what we're talking about. With that said, I think if I can suggest we break up our conversation as a board and discuss the cash balance policy and the 070 fund first, then we can lead into the more critical conversations. So from my standpoint, the cash balance policy is something that this board passed. And communicating to the voter, we passed it because we recognized we do have cash funding issues, and that it wouldn't just be reasonable to just say, hey, just leave it alone. We need to give the taxpayer money direction, and we need to give that money stewardship. And so the cash balance policy was a way to address that. It's unfortunate that Mr. Burns has left, because these are the conversations that we should be having. But fortunately, this meeting's recorded, and Mr. Burns and anyone else can watch it at their leisure. But that cash balance policy was us saying, as a board, to the public, what is wise stewardship of funds? What is a metric, a rubric that we can share with the public, that when our finances go south to the left, it's time to have conversations about whether cuts or new revenue, which is ultimately not renewing a levy, not passing a levy to keep our funds revenue neutral. It's having a conversation with the voting taxpayer that the district needs an increase in revenue, which turns into an increase in their taxes. On the other hand, what do we do if we're in a situation where we do have money in the bank And how do we make sure and assure ourselves and the public that we're not going to just say, any plan that comes across our desk, we got money in the bank, write the check, hire the people, have the new program, it all sounds good, and we'll worry about tomorrow. From a fiscal prudence standpoint, I was proud of that cash balance policy, and I thought it was the right thing to do. We've talked about the limits of the 5-year forecast. To me, it gave more direction. And when we created out of the cash balance policy, the next thing we created was the 070 fund, which I'm proud of us and this board for doing that and saying, we recognize that our buildings have serious needs, and those needs are not going away, and those needs should not be ignored. And so we said, we're going to do something physical that we can report on, and we're going to take a portion of our bank account and give it purpose and give it direction, not just always saying it, but saying, if you want to know where that money is, you can go to the 070 fund. Which is a long way of me saying I'm a little agitated at the idea that we took it off the books or we hid it or whatever. If, the only way that's true is if we hid it in plain sight. It was in the 070 fund because we wanted to say that those dollars need to be allocated for our buildings. And as a board, we did the work with the community to say one way that we think would be proper is to make it a down payment on our capital expenses. So with all of that said, we now need to deal with what we're faced with now. And so I think I want to have some discussion about the cash balance policy is just that. It's a policy. And right now, there are no triggers on that policy. But if we do nothing, those triggers will happen in how many years, George? If we left the cash balance policy as it is, 3 years? Maybe 4
26,
years?
27, right, George?
Yeah, I was looking at the spreadsheet. Yeah, 26, 27. So that would be in 3 years
3 years, and
if we did nothing.
it's all, well, again, one of the things we always struggle with is calendar years versus school years, right? So although we're in 24, school years, we always think of 25. And so either way, it's 2 years or 3 years, depending on how you want to look at it. So I do think, what I would like to see if there's support with the board is to send that policy back to the policy committee and have them do the initial work on whether we revise it. And then ultimately, that's important enough that I think it comes back to the board as a whole. But it can start, and it's timely that we have a policy committee meeting when?
Tuesday, Wednesday, next week,
The 18th.
18.
1:30.
So time could be of the essence, but it's timely to do that. And then I think we can do the, based on that, we can look at the 070 fund and determine how we want to deal with the funds in the 070 fund. Michelle did bring up the idea of simplifying the accounting and moving that money back into the general fund. The plus of that is it makes it very easy, and it removes any question about, are we hiding money? The downside of it is it is in contrast to what we as a board have been trying to do and position. And I'm loath to just do one or the other without that conversation. But I think I've talked enough. Who else wants to contribute?
I just feel like our building issues have not changed. You know, we started the bigger facility committee group, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago? And they put a lot of work and effort into coming up with a plan to improve our buildings, and that hasn't changed. We now have gone from buildings that need repairs to trailers sitting outside of those buildings. So I think the 070 account going away, it's not going to help fix any of that. I think we need to go back and really start looking at our facilities. That's just my opinion.
I share your opinion. Well said.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I have a lot of thoughts, but the one I wish to share is that should we abolish the policy or amend the policy and send the money back, it's not best practice. No one, not me, not you in your individual homes, is going to budget to spend more than you bring in. It's just not how people typically run their finances. You don't rely on your savings for your expenses. And so when the board recognized that for a variety of reasons that Shannon did not acknowledge, we ended up with a surplus due to world circumstances, we also recognized that using those to just pay our operating expenses was unwise, because that money goes very, very quickly if you're not bringing in revenue as well. So we purposed that money to give to the community and say, you already invested this into the district, we are going to put it forth in this project, right? And to continue the trajectory we are. That is the main purpose. We cannot run a district on a savings account. It will fail, and it will fail quickly. So I just want to point out that if we do move it back, it is not best practice. But to acknowledge Shannon's point, he's saying, you're sitting on all this money, you better spend it. That's what the community wants. Right? Okay, I hear you, but I need the community to understand that if we make that decision, it is against the best interest of the district. But I do understand that it might be in the best interest of the voter at the moment. And so I'm saying this out loud so people understand that the dilemma that we face, this is not as easy as just give us the money and, cover the expenses. It's not that simple. It is a snowball effect that is going to have long-term consequences for how we run this district. I think that's enough for now.
The thing I was thinking about that you're saying that I think about a lot is when you're dealing with your finances, you can solve a problem with one-time money, but then you can't go back again with that one-time money. And it's the difference between if you're, as a trite example, if you're living beyond your means, right? Sometimes you can solve that problem by withdrawing your 401k or taking it from your vacation fund or taking it from wherever, but it's a one-time fix. And if you have systemic issues, you need a raise at work, you need a new job with a new income. Those are long-term fixes. And that's how I encapsulate what the board and George and Cameron deal with. We're going to make decisions about next school year. And I anticipate there'll be some one-time fixes. But what that means is I want to acknowledge out loud for ourselves, to keep ourselves honest, and for the public, that one-time fix then, in a way, kicks the can down the road. Right now, we've expressed that. Our plan was to grow into that, right? But it doesn't address the fact that ultimately, we're talking about what is the revenue, the amount of money the school district needs, not to maintain the status quo. I don't think I don't think anyone in this room wants to maintain the status quo. What is the amount of money the school district needs to continue the progress that it has been showing for the past 5 to 10 years? And if anyone listening at home needs to know what we're talking about, rewind to the beginning of this meeting and watch our students from the string orchestra and realize That's what the investment is. And that kind of progress grows and builds on itself. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens because the taxpayer entrusted the tax dollars with us to begin with. And so I'm comfortable saying we just need to earn that trust again. But if everyone agrees, I think we send the cash balance policy back to the policy committee. That will have a consequence on the 070 fund. There's a lot of mechanics to the 070 fund as far as how we deal with that and what the amount in that fund is. But if anyone is cheating and moving ahead in their agenda, we have some HVAC projects that Steve's going to talk to us about that we're targeting the money in the 070 fund to pay for.
So the 25 million.
I'm sorry?
So the 25
The
million.
25 million.
Is it still 25?
No, it's about 25.8 with interest that's been
Yeah.
earned over time.
Thank you.
So as far as that direction is concerned, I think that's where we should move. And unless there's specific questions, I think we can go to the next series of things that we need to discuss. And that's the potential reductions. So we said in our plan that if the levy would fail, that would necessitate in 25-26, $3 million in reductions. We can maintain that. We can choose not to do any of those reductions, or we can discuss a framework of something in the middle. Does anyone want to start that conversation?
I choose no reductions.
Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay.
I'm not saying like forever, but I think until November, my goal would be, if you want to gain the trust back, I think the only way you can do that is say, okay, this is what the community seems to want. They don't like to see us having a lot of money in the bank, which, okay, I get that. I mean, nobody wants to pay taxes, so I understand where they're coming from. But for us to cut things and then keep that money in the bank seems to be just a waste of our time. We're just spinning our wheels, because we're going to be answering the same questions again come November. You have all this money. Then we're going to really ruin lives. We're going to cut people's jobs. We're going to ultimately probably hurt some programs and kids. And then we're going to end up in the same place we were before. So for me, I mean, personally, I think that it's a waste of our time right now. Now, I'm not saying come November, my feel would be if we cut nothing and we reduce what we have, and we come to them and say, we've done what you've asked us to do, and, why is my phone ringing? Okay. Then I say, then we have a leg to stand on, then we've listened, and we've compromised, and, I mean, that's my view on it. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but that's.
I agree. I said last meeting that I agree with the stance of spending what we have and going from there.
You know.
I can support that. I just want to make sure it's abundantly clear that we are in the one-time fix category here. This won't work forever. It may work right now, but we're going to start having the actual expenses that money was designed for, such as HVAC, if we don't get new buildings, roofs, what else? We got lots of things that are failing.
Yeah.
We are taking, it's not that we're not making a reduction. We are just reducing from a different spot. And it is a one-time or maybe two-time fix. I think it is what it is. I mean, it is a one-time or two-time fix. It, I think, is what appears that the community wants right now.
I mean, it's not easy, it's not an easy discussion. I see both sides, but I think I agree. We've got a little bit of cushion. Let's not make the cuts, and I agree. It's a one-time in my mind. You know, when we get to November and see what happens, then
I think even before that, I think when we get to August and we say, you know, we can sit down and say, okay, these might be some things that need to get cut if we can't pass it again. Because you just can't go on and keep spending money and not
Right.
getting any
We won't
money.
know
I mean,
anything
that's
until-
just, yeah.
right, we won't know till November.
So we won't really know till November, but maybe in fairness to the community, if we started in July or August saying these are some of the things that are going to have to be cut if this doesn't pass, you know, I don't
So,
I don't
think we
know.
have a little bit of the apple before the cart. So what I'm going to, what I'm going to suggest is that focusing on the $3 million neglects a bigger picture. And so the first thing I want to make sure we're all aware of is the plan that George and Cameron brought to us was $3 million next year, approximately $6.5 million the year after,
Total.
total, which means an additional, not,
Yeah, yeah, right.
not 3 and then another 3. It's 3 for next school year, then 6, and then 9 to 10.
So
And
that
so-
money is
So we're kicking.
gone. I mean, if the 25 million is gone, if we go that way.
If we would go that way.
Correct.
Right? So, one thing that we can choose to do, and I think is the direction we're going in, is not saying we're going to avoid, delay, postpone $3 million in cuts next year. That tees up a potential for $9 million in cuts the school year thereafter, and $9 million in cuts in the third school year to get to the same budgeting place. For my opinion, it's a one-time. We're not going to be able to do this twice. It is a one-time decision. The other thing that I'm very much aware of is we continue to talk about November as if it's a done deal. And I just want to make sure that we've communicated out loud. Those cuts may need to occur unless we address systemically our income, our revenue. And we've had the conversation, and we're going to have the conversation again. I will share, because it sticks in my craw. I reject the idea that we're discussing a compromise. I reject the idea that we're discussing as if the board has one position and different people in the opposition, and can't we just find a way to come to the middle? There's one group that is not part of that conversation, and that's the students. And so whenever we discuss this compromise as if, well, you know, you guys want this and we want this and we'll meet somewhere in the middle, it's neglecting what our job is. It's just like having this quick conversation, I want 40, well, I'll give you 20, can we call it a day? And while that solves the conversation, it doesn't solve what we need to do as a school district for the 5.5 to soon to be 6,000 students. And so I want to say that out loud just to keep myself honest. This idea of compromise, the thing I think as a board and a district we should do a better job of is communicating what we do with our students. and why it is a good mission. And I go back to the strings this morning. And as a board and as teachers and as administrators, we are blessed to have the privilege to have that all the time. We interact with students, we see what's happening, we see their growth, we see their learning, we see the joy of them growing all the time. When you're in the ballot box and you're just looking at your taxes, sometimes you forget what you're buying. But that's the conversation I think we need to double down on, is not how much is this going to increase my taxes, but what am I buying?
Can I follow up on that?
Of course you can. I talk too much.
Another thing that I hope that Shannon, again, I wish he could have stayed, but I hope that he goes and watches it. And I want to say out loud, I think the predicament that I find myself as a single board member, with the positing of the two groups and the compromise. And I'm going to read this, and I think I'm going to read it every meeting until this conversation is over. It's from our Code of Ethics. And there are many, there are actually P items. I'm just going to read H. It says, render all decisions based on the available facts and my independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups. The challenge that I have, and in response to the accusation that we did not engage in those conversations, is that we are in a lose-lose position. It is not, I take this very seriously, I take this role very seriously. It is my responsibility to our students and our taxpayers to make independent judgments based on facts. It is not my job to compromise with certain groups or individuals in the community. And I can't engage in that kind of even premise without coming into conflict with our code of ethics. So I'm saying out loud for the public that I hear the request, and I'm saying that I don't know that I can in good faith engage in that conversation. I can talk with community members as individual people, as homeowners, as parents. I can talk in that context. But when it comes to groups who have a clear agenda that may or may not have anything to do with the school district, it becomes very muddy very quickly. And so I'm saying, to Shannon and any other group that would have that same request, is I'm not in a position to negotiate with a group that has its own set of values.
Thank you. So, at least for myself, I think I got a little lofty and a little off track to bring it back to our decision. While I can support the idea of not instituting $3 million in cuts this year, what I do think, and I would like to make sure we have consensus, I do think we have to acknowledge that there are issues, that there are systemic issues. I would like to suggest that our charge to administration should be to freeze any non-mandatory staffing increases and look for natural reductions by attrition. Cameron had a very good program to continue to grow. We've reviewed it. It was a 3-year program that talked about additional staff this year, additional staff next year, additional staff in the 3rd year. I don't think in good conscience we are in any position to continue with that plan. I think that plan is paused. We are going through the exercise with our leadership team of where could we make cuts. I think we still, as a board and as a team, need to look at those cuts, and any cuts that are, as we said, non-mandatory or what have you, we should be rigorous about
Right.
and cut out.
I agree with that.
I don't want to set a target of saying, I want to see $1 million in cuts. I don't want to set a target of saying, let's compromise and make it $1.5 million. I want to go through the exercise, because the exercise will either serve as highlighting what we're doing and what it costs and what we get for it, and then in a negative, cynical way, we're going to have to do that exercise next year if the plan that we create doesn't get its support. So to me, it's kind of like a preparation of, if we're going to make a decision today to avoid that, and I can support that portion of it, we also have to acknowledge the other half of it. And I will not support, I could not support just kicking the can down the road.
In an attempt to be transparent and have the compromise conversation that we've had, I think one of the biggest pleas on our part, unspoken, is that we're trusting or in good faith that any opposition that we do have, whether it be the community, whether it be people that are speaking on behalf of the community, that they're going to support us come down, a couple months from now. I know that there's always going to be people voting no for the levy, no matter what it is, so it's hard to kind of see which of those voters, there's that drop-down boxes. Would you have voted if we didn't have this much money in the bank? Would you have done this? I guess on my behalf and on the board's behalf, the hope or the understanding or maybe the expectation that opposition, especially those that have spoken at public comment, are going to back us when the time comes, so we're not kicking this down, down farther and farther. And that, especially if emails are being sent or color copies are being made and that's illegal, I'm hoping that those groups, whoever they may be, are willing and planning to fund the effort to pass this levy when that time comes, so that we have a plan in action as a whole community, not just as a board, not just as yes versus no, but that those groups who feel, and maybe they do, maybe they speak for everybody that voted no, maybe they only speak for a third of the people that voted no, but that they also have a plan of action to change their literature around that doesn't necessarily say to vote no for the levy, that they are planning to go full steam ahead to not kick this down the road any farther than need be, so we don't get ourselves into a pickle. I'm hoping that that's going to be the case. I don't have a crystal ball, but from what I understand, I should be expecting to see outside groups funding signage and mailers and robocalls 10 times a day, telling people to vote yes for the levy when the time comes. And if not, then we may have been duped and/or lied to.
But thank you.
First time here, and the gentleman left.
We'll talk,
I just think about that. I have 2 kids waiting in the car. My daughter performed. She has to be up at 6:45 tomorrow for chamber strings. If you give me 3 minutes, I promise you I will not take a half an hour like the gentleman did.
I appreciate it. If you're here at the end of the meeting, we'll talk. Otherwise,
They're waiting in the car.
then go home and take care of them, and 6:45 will occur soon enough. But thank you for bringing them.
If you
Thank
email
for
us, we
staying.
can respond to you.
Yeah, it's more, it's frustrating to hear a gentleman here say things that impact kids, and,
Thank you very much.
all that time to speak.
His number.
We're on your side.
Thank you.
People might stop listening after 3 minutes, though, so.
Thank you.
Like this that makes 50 calls a day to tell us to vote no, he gets all the time in the world. But I'm not mad at you, I'm mad at the gentleman here, because it's thank you very much, appreciate everything you do.
Thank
I
you.
promise you I'll be back to the next one, and you'll see me more often.
And just write out a slip, and you can make a public comment right at the beginning. All right,
Drive
thank you.
safely.
I'm willing to let him interject more. So,
Yeah, I was kind of like hoping you'd let him talk.
Cameron, I think your direction is the $3 million in cuts will be added to year 2 of 6 million for a total of 9 million. Your direction is to freeze any non-mandatory staffing increases and bring forward the plans that the cult had so that the board can start digesting it and work wherever we can to toe the line on expenses.
Can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Miko, if you're okay, I am going to ask that we can go out of order a little bit because I know there's going to be some discussion with Mr. Bruckner And I know some of our other folks have some commitments this evening that I'd like to get them home to. So we do not have, we'll come back to Mr. Breckner, we do not have anything on their curriculum. Mr. Trujillo, if you can come up and share your item for student services, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. I have one item for you this evening, and that is STEPS Educational Group. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with STEPS Educational Group for placement of a student with disabilities for the 2024-2025 school year with a start date of November 25th, 2024 through the summer ESY session ending on July 25th, 2025 in the amount of $52,666.88.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Mr. Bain with the HR report for the month.
Good evening. I have the following items in human resources for your consideration. Item 1, resignations, non-certificated. Item 2, retirements, certificated. Item 3, retirement leadership. Item 4, appointments, certificated. Item 5, appointments, non-certificated. Item 6, appointments, non-certificated substitutes. Item 7, appointments, certificated, athletic supplemental contracts. Item 8, appointments, non-certificated, athletic supplemental contracts. Item 9, appointments, certificated, supplemental contracts. Item 10, appointment, non-certificated, supplemental contract, prorated. Item 11, changes in hours, non-certificated. Item 12, change in status, non-certificated. Item 13, contract recommendations, non-certificated. Item 14, educational and experience upgrade. Item 15, auditorium stage crew and video truck assistant pay rates, 2024-2025. Item 16, volunteers chaperones. Item 17, leaves of absence, certificated. Item 18, leaves of absence, non-certificated. And item 19, revision.
Questions for Ryan? Thank you. Next up, we have our Director of Instructional Technology, Mr. Binkley, with his report for the month.
Good evening. I have one item tonight about Power School School Messenger. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the renewal of Power School School Messenger Communicate license and subscription fees for the period of January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, at the cost of $9,339.80.
Questions for Dave? Thank you, Dave. Now, who's ready to talk HVAC? Steve is. Yeah.
He's lined up ready.
Good evening, everyone. A moment that's been teased and waited for. I have a few items in my section of the agenda. The first one is disposal, surplus inventory disposal. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the following obsolete surplus inventory radios be disposed via sale in the amount of $2,500, and the quantities are there in that section, and the model of radios are also in that section. The second item is the demolition of the water chiller, and this is from the Permanent Improvement Fund. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education accept the proposal from Gardner for the demolition of the water chiller at Strongsville High School, not to exceed $40,671. Gardner is a preferred partner of the Ohio Schools Council, and this is consortium pricing, and the exhibit is there for the change order. And just as a reminder, this is a change order on a project that was already approved by the board. This is replacing the multi-stack chiller at the high school with an air-cooled chiller plant at the high school. for one of the many sections at the high school. Does that need?
It does require a
Okay.
vote.
Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education accepts the proposal from Gardner for the demolition of the water chiller at the Strongsville High School not to exceed $40,671. Gardner is a preferred partner of the Ohio Schools Council, and this is consortium pricing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Can you explain consortium pricing for us?
Sure. So consortium pricing, especially with the Ohio Schools Council, what the Ohio Schools Council does on our behalf and on the behalf of other schools that they serve, I believe there's like 400 in some now, but don't quote me on that exact number, please. What they do is they go out to various companies that deal with the physical plant and other such items, and they ask for basically what a lot of people would term state term pricing. What's the best pricing you can get? There's criteria, there's contracts that they draw up on our behalf, and because we're members of that organization, we can then draw on those contracts, and that is a state-approved way to purchase items that otherwise we would have to go out for a public bid, have sealed bids, and then criteria, and in many cases go with the lowest bidder after vetting those vendors. This speeds up the process, and it does fulfill all the requirements set forth by Ohio law.
What is a multi-stack chiller? Is it going to make good ice cubes for me?
Actually, it used to, back when it was new. So this is a replacement of that type of chiller. It uses water in the pipes to heat and to cool. We've been having issues with it as the pipes have been deteriorating. Also, with the size of the unit up there, there's 4 different pumps that are needed. And I know you're not as excited about HVAC as I am, but if you recall the captivating conversation we had a few months ago, one of those pumps started to fail. Actually, one pump did fail. The price for that repair was between $30,000 and $40,000. So the other thing is, once one of the pumps fail, that work then gets distributed to the other pumps, which of course shortens their life. So the recommendation, when we had this all looked at, and again, this has all been approved and the work's been started, was to replace the entire unit with a more energy efficient, air-cooled unit that also aligns with all of the other renovated type of units that we have at the high school. This particular change order is that at the outset, we thought we could demolish and remove this multi-stack from the site. However, as the project was started and as we evaluated, what we thought we could do internally would have not only just the person hours involved, but also the cost of the equipment, cranes, security and safety equipment would have far exceeded just having Gardner do it. They're used to doing it. Their people are trained to do it. We would have been maybe saving a few dollars here and there, but also not doing something that, quite frankly, was out of the realm of our day-to-day maintenance tasks. And while they're more than up to any challenge that we've had, we had to sit down and have a serious conversation about this would best be done by a third party because of all the risk involved and all the equipment involved.
Sounds good. Any other questions? Hearing none, take the roll.
Ms. Stovic?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
the motion carries.
All right, the third item in this section is an HVAC project at Kinsner to come from the 070 Capital Project Fund account. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education accepts the proposal from Gardner for the HVAC project at Kinsner Elementary not to exceed $1,821,580. Gardner is a preferred partner in the Ohio Schools Council, and this is consortium pricing. And the quote for the work is attached in this section.
This also requires a separate vote. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education accepts the proposal from Gardner for the HVAC project at Kinsner Elementary not to exceed $1,821,580.00. Gardner is a preferred partner of the Ohio Schools Council, and this is consortium pricing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Steve, what is consortium pricing?
I refer to my
teasing.
previous answer if you wish
Yeah.
to rewind the video.
Rewind it.
Would you be kind enough to give us an overview of this project?
Sure. So Kinsner, when it was originally built, I believe 1997 was the date. It was installed with what's called a two-pipe system. So to keep this very simple, a two-pipe system, you have one pipe going out, one pipe coming in. That means that all the hot water that's used in the coils in the individual units within the rooms all come from one source and all return to one source. So it's always hot water and cold water being used in that same piping system. While that system does have its advantages, one of which being it's cost-effective versus compared to the four-pipe system that I'll get into in a minute, it's really best used in climates that have a more moderate or steady temperature, which by definition, not Ohio mostly on maybe even a 12-hour swing. Doesn't describe Ohio, let alone the seasons that we have. When it was opened, there were quickly discovered some issues with that HVAC system. Some improvements were made to the system to help solve the issue. However, those were basically solving the symptoms and not the disease, in my opinion. Because of the fluctuation, you had a lot of condensation that was happening over at Kinsner. At one point, it is my understanding, I was not here in this role at that time, but it's my understanding that there was a mold issue because there was so much condensation. So what was discovered is that the ground that Kinsner was built on is very saturated, and a lot of that ground air, because those systems were so close to the ground, was very moist. It was coming into the school, causing a lot of condensation in a lot of areas, so they had to mitigate for mold in some of those classrooms. The solution for that was to board up the air vents on the outside of those classroom units. However, that did create some issues with indoor air quality because you were not pulling in quality outdoor air, so makeup air units were installed that seemed to mitigate those issues. However, since I've taken over this position, we've always had complaints about a smell at Kinsner. No matter how well those makeup air units were working, it was still the proverbial square peg in a round hole because those pipes were still producing a lot of condensation because you were putting hot water through, and then if you needed to cool down the place, you would put cold water through. That sudden change either way would cause condensation on those pipes. The other issue is over at Kinsner, which is unlike any other building that we have, because it's all a part of one system. If you have a lot of people in the gym and it becomes warm, you have to put cold water throughout the whole building because it's all one system. So there's no ability to control any of the temperature within the different zones in that building. So that's the history. For those of you that haven't lost yet, moving forward, we're proposing a four-pipe system and air handling units in the ceiling. What that will do is 4 pipes means 2 pipes going in, 2 pipes going out. One of those pipes is dedicated cold, one of those pipes is dedicated hot. We're going to abandon in place those univents that are in the classrooms and put in ceiling VAVs, which are basically variable control in the ceiling, and also air handlers in the ceiling, which are constantly pushing out fresh air into the classrooms. This solution, I feel, in conversations with Keith Simek, the maintenance foreman, doing some research, this will take care of a lot of the issues that we are having and mitigate those issues of, number one, condensation causing mold and mildew within the fan coils, which we have deep cleaned those, we have cleaned the trays out, we constantly are doing that, and within a very short amount of time, the smell is back, the mildew is back. That will completely eliminate that issue. It will also eliminate the issue of the air exchange, make it much more conducive to controlling not only just the smells that are in the building, but also we're going to be able now to control, much like the other buildings that we have, if this section's too hot, we can cool down that section. Every corridor is going to have its own air handling unit, AHU, that pushes the air in, and then every classroom is going to have those VAVs, which will be able to regulate hot and cold within the classrooms themselves.
$1.8 million. Problems fixed?
Yes.
So we don't have to ask the question of, what if it's not fixed?
No.
Works for me. And again, it's easy to ask these questions, but the last thing anybody wants is for us to replace all of that equipment, invest 1.8 million taxpayer dollars, and then we still have an odor.
Correct. I mean, this is designed to mitigate all of those issues. And I do think it's important to point out that no matter what plan that we were creating, whether it was internally on where we needed to go with the physical envelope of this building, or if it was part of a larger plan of renovation of elementary schools or replacement of elementary schools, this was on the plan regardless. This is something that we've known had to be addressed. We've been, since I've took this position, I think this is my 7th year now, but I'd have to look back at the contracts. This is something that we knew needed to be done. However, in light of plans that we had made, it kept getting pushed off. This needs to be done, in my opinion, not only because we need to take care of this issue, it's been part of plans. Hesitating, especially on an HVAC project, will do nothing more than cause more money to have to be pushed into the HVAC project for the solution. It's a rising cost that I do not see reducing, and it's time to make this decision before the cost becomes too astronomical.
As far as the plan is concerned, Gardner supports this system?
Correct. And just for everyone's knowledge, Gardner's has done other projects with us. As part of the Secure Entryway project, they did a mini split over at Muraski. They're the ones that installed all of the HVAC over at Chapman when we went from an electric air handling unit. We ran the gas line there. So they've been partners with us. We've worked with them. The last project they did with us was the front or the north side of Sarar, replacing that air handling unit, and we haven't had any issues. Everything that, in my experience with Gardner, when they've designed these projects, it's solved the issues that they were designed to solve.
Timing, you want to do this in the summer?
Correct.
We need permits from the city?
Not to my knowledge.
It's a very big project. Any concerns about opening school on time?
No. That's why I'm bringing it to you now. Any delay would mean potential delays for the equipment to come in, and that could jeopardize school starting. I've been assured that with us getting on this project now, getting the materials ordered as soon as possible after hopefully affirmation from the board that we want to move forward with this project, we should be in a good spot of getting this completed before school starts.
Any other questions? Please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Motion carries. And before you go on, Steve, thank you. HVAC, some people don't think is exciting, but this board appreciates the fact that you,
We love it.
that
I live for this.
appreciates the fact that you know it's important. Cold kids in the winter and warm kids in the summer are a bad thing. and I appreciate you working on this project.
What exactly is the smell at Kinstar? I've never heard about that.
I'm sorry?
What's the smell at Kinstar? How
It's a
would you describe
combination
it?
of people believing that there's mold that's growing again, but really it's, like I said, in the fan coils, there's,
Could it just be stinky feet?
no.
Oh.
No, but it is, it may be a little closer to the truth than people want to think, because there's poor air exchange. It's like going into the attic.
Yeah.
It's just there's some stale air there that needs to be exchanged in a more efficient manner.
Gifts?
The last section I have for you tonight is gifts. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the following gifts be approved. Michael Papatonis donated a bass amplifier valued at $700 to Strongsville Middle School, and the Strongsville Athletic Boosters donated $3,399.27 for a shed for the athletic department.
Any other questions for Steve?
Where are they putting the shed?
It's going underneath the bleachers at Packatan Stadium.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Next on our agenda is report on Polaris Career Center. Mrs. Bissell. Oh, no.
It's my last
Mrs.
time.
Hausum. I'm going to get my handkerchief.
It's my last Polaris reports. Last night concluded the Explorer Club. It took place this week and last week for grades 4 to 6. According to all the pictures on Facebook, it looks like everyone had a great time at Explorer Club. The ERA project is underway. Ground has been broken. It's too soon to say when that will be completed, but everyone is excited for an addition to be built onto Polaris and see what future projects that bring, or future programs brings. And lastly, we had our board dinner this week. We honored Bob Timmons, our retiring superintendent. And I just wanted, he sent a board update last week, and I just wanted to read the last paragraph because I thought it was very touching. He says, "Thank you again for your trust and support. You have enabled me to achieve my 2 career goals, one being to make Polaris so much a part of our associate schools and communities that no one could imagine a day where Polaris did not exist, and the other being to dispel the belief that a career technical education is somehow deemed to be a lesser than choice for students." I thought that was very touching, and it really hit home that Polaris is such a big part of our community and our surrounding communities, and Bob has done a really amazing job of making sure that, you know, the kids are recognized and have had some great opportunities. Then I just wanted to say that Strongsville we have 145 applicants, which is 38% of our population, and that's, I think, the highest that we've had. So that's a really big accomplishment for us and for Polaris. And lastly, I just want to welcome Diane Zander as the new superintendent and wish her luck in her endeavors as she starts in the new year. And that concludes the report.
May I add one thing? I want to thank Laura for her service to the board this year. For those of you who don't know how Polaris works, there are 6 associate school districts, and you don't have a board with an even number of people. And so the way Polaris has solved this is that every year, one of those associate school districts gets to appoint an extra member. And so Laura came in, and if you've never been on a board like this, it's very hard to do the job and do it well just 1 year. It's a lot of learning on the job, and so I just wanted to thank Laura. Not only did she do that, but she came in a huge year where we did the first superintendent search at Polaris in 17 years. It was a long, arduous process that had some hiccups that Laura pushed through to be part of that conversation. So I just want the public to know that Laura served you well at Polaris, so thank you.
What school district is next year? North Olmsted has a great standard to follow and tough shoes to fill. But thank you again for the work you do on behalf of Strongsville. Next is report on legislation. We are in the lame duck session. Sometime next week, they will wrap up both the Senate and the House in Columbus. I will announce, and I'll tee up the conversation Mr. Binkley and I will have later, but the governor did sign House Bill 432, which was make some changes to career tech and STEM, but it also addresses some of the reporting requirements, unintended consequences of SB 29, makes them more reasonable. We still need to digest the changes to the law, but from what I've been able to gather, it makes it more reasonable, not quite so onerous. From a parent standpoint, you will not get a flurry of emails every single time your student accesses something on the internet, but it also maintains our obligation and what we should be doing, which is when we're concerned that there's something that could have a negative effect happening, we will report that to the parents so that we can respond appropriately. Board liaison reports, City Council.
Unfortunately, I had a conflict at their last meeting. I wasn't able to attend, but they did have the lighting of the center of town. Santa was able to come in, and they had their fireworks. It was a beautiful evening, and I cannot believe how many people were there. It's so great to see so many people partake and see the center of the town filled. They do have one more meeting this year, and that's this coming Monday, December 16th at 7 p.m. That concludes my report.
I do know the mayor remarked on how many people were there and how it just has become such a great citywide event that's enjoyed by young and old people or persons. So it was fun. The commons are still lit up, so make sure to take the opportunity to visit and enjoy all the decorations and the holiday spirit.
The fireworks were awesome. They were so long. I kept thinking they were over, and they kept going. So it was nice. They did a good job.
We're very fortunate, all the donations, there's no tax dollars spent on those. Everything is donated.
Yeah.
And if you see Jennifer Milbrandt, make sure to say thank you to her, because it's her hard work throughout the year to turn into one evening for the entire city to enjoy. Strongsville Education Foundation?
Oh, that's me. That's me. They had a meeting this morning, although I was unable to attend, but their casino night went great. I think they raised around $33,000, which is amazing. So thanks to everyone who had a hand in that. They worked very hard, and I went to it, and it was a really fun night. And so I'm really happy for them because they all worked really hard. So far this year, they've reviewed and voted on a total of 10 grants, of which they had 7 approved, totaling $7,468. The remaining budget for the year is $7,608. So there's still grants out there to be had. And also for the 2025 school year, for their student awards, for the scholarships, you can go online and you fill it out. It's on the Strongsville High School website, and those will be online towards the end of January. So anybody who's interested, get your application filled out, so they can look over that. So I think that concludes my report.
Thank you, Sharon. Next is, I'm jumping ahead. Strongsville PTA.
The next meeting we had a really nice luncheon for the PTA. It was at Waterford this year, and everyone did, they always do like a really nice job, all the volunteers and everything. Their next meeting is January 9th. February 25th is Founder's Day at 6:30. That's when they recognize people that have gone above and beyond in the PTA. Reflections, which is done by Katie Drake, she entered 3 different categories for national awards. They are also having an art show December 14th from 10 to 2 at the library. And December 19th from 7 to 9, NEO is in Brunswick, and it's for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and you can look online and get your tickets. Those are $20 apiece, and the kids get 2 slices of pizza and a drink. And they are also looking for high school volunteers for that, to help out. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Sharon. Board committee reports? Finance committee?
Oh, we haven't had one, but I will say I do want to schedule one in February. One of the topics I want to discuss is based with I wanted to see how tonight went and the direction there. But I do want to talk also on the committee about our investing, on how far out we, right now we go in ladders of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We might have to revisit that 4th and 5th year.
Policy committee?
We have a meeting December 18th at 1:30 PM here.
Facilities committee, we have a meeting scheduled February 11th at 6:30 PM in this building. And Business Advisory Council.
Our next meeting is February 7th at 7:30 AM here.
Next on our agenda is adoption of the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent calendar at this point of the agenda means all items appearing in the agenda denoted as type action consent are adopted by a single motion unless requested otherwise. Do I have any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. I will start the discussion that we did change some of the language. Can you summarize again, George?
Yeah, for the special board meeting, for the minutes and
We removed the portion that referred to,
yeah, audio and visual. So in the recommended action, remove the portion that referenced the audio and video recordings. It's a special meeting, and we typically don't record those.
I don't remember any other modifications or changing, so unless there are other questions, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next is timely information. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. George, if you hit source search on the remote.
Correct, I need to connect again.
Oh, were you doing it wirelessly?
Yeah, for whatever reason, the projector
Okay.
just turned off, so.
So the board members can see it on their computer. A couple highlights we want to go as we go across the district and
If you want,
start at.
I'll get it on in a second if you want.
That's okay. Chapman Elementary School, we want to highlight Ms. Hop and Mrs. Way. This first grade students at Chapman, they job share. So 2 teachers that are working together at Chapman. They recently had I think this is such a creative idea. They had a mission to save Thanksgiving where they had to complete 4 math activities to make sure the food made it back before dinner time. And to culminate their solving of the mystery, the kids got to enjoy their own Thanksgiving meal, which is, again, connects to our Model Mustang skills, as you could see, the areas of focus there, and gives our kids engaging activities to mere fun, which is important to have at any age of school, with significant learning, critical thinking, and problem solving. And obviously, they were resilient and collaborative throughout the work. So if we go to the middle school this time of year, it's been a long-standing tradition. I think even before Jenny and I were at Center, it was started at Center Middle School. Now it's SMS Gives Back. It started out as, hey, doing some fundraising, some different activities to give to Center families or Strongsville families in need. As the middle schools have come together, they've continued on this amazing transition that I think Deanna Gunlaw started many years ago and retired recently. But so what they did, I think it was last Friday, they culminated all this work. They took various donations. They went to Target to do some shopping, took those items and donations and shopping, whether it was board games or gift cards or household needs. And the 8th graders, took all of that and went to the rec center. And as you could see in the picture, that is a ton of bagging and wrapping. And again, what an awesome experience to serve others, right? We talk about math and social studies and AP classes, and that all is outstanding work that we do. But the ability to think about others that may be in need, to serve those others that are in need, really embodies our global competency in the Model Mustang and just builds great human beings and young people. And so they're able to support more than 280 families this season with gifts based on their efforts. So I think that's amazing. Going to the high school, tomorrow we'll have our 60 Seconds that features this as well. But again, this has probably been about 10-plus years. Ms. Tanya Barba, who's one of our world language teachers at the high school, she created a partnership with teachers and educators from El Salvador. So they've been over to Strongsville at least 2 or 3 times now that I recall. And so they come and visit us to learn what we're doing in our schools and in our classrooms, and then they're able to take that back, and they're able to share with us what they're doing in their classrooms so we can learn between different countries. And so they visited our school in the recent weeks, and this year they expanded, not just in the world language classes, but they were in our business classes, our music classes. Dan and I and Scott were able to ended up showing up in the food class to pupusas.
Coincidentally.
Is that how you say pupusas? I think that's right. So they were amazing. Basically, was it matzah or two kind of sides of dough? You put a filling. It was typically a bean paste and then some meat in there. And they sealed it together, fried it, and they had a spicy coleslaw, which I love spicy food, and different name for it, but basically a salsa that was on top of it. So, considering the fact that Scott, Dan, and my plates were completely empty, it was delicious and had a great opportunity meeting and speaking to our visitors. If you see that bottom right picture with the students and me and some of our visitors, the kids in the high school were able to be the translators for me speaking English to Spanish and for our partners from El Salvador for translating Spanish to English. So they did it. I mean, they did a phenomenal job. I only got the Spanish too, so I was never able to have those skills, but it seemed pretty impressive to me, so they did a great job. And then as we heard earlier tonight, phenomenal musicians. There's more of that to come, continuing tomorrow into next week through Wednesday. We have elementary concerts as well as the middle school orchestra concert, and 5th and 6th graders with the high school on Monday. And I put it in my last parent update, and as just a reminder, next week on Friday, our students in K-5 will attend school, but our students in grades 6 to 12, as well as preschool, because they're always off on Fridays, will not attend school on that day, so just be on the lookout for that change in schedule. And again, we have winter break coming up, but with all of the concerts, you can watch it via live stream or on demand at SES TV. And that concludes my timely information.
Thank you, Cameron. Next on our agenda is Board of Education Other. We do have our Board of Education meeting dates for next year. I will suggest that the location of our December meeting should be at the middle school. That would be the one suggestion I would have.
The only thing I wanted to ask is, that meeting is December 4th. We could potentially go 5 weeks in before we meet again in January. Do we want to meet that early in December?
Does that put you in a bind for any end-of-the-year votes?
I just want to do the financial report for November.
We'd avoid a financial report?
I could do it in January.
That might be a positive, no. Operationally, does it have any issues for us?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we usually do the second Thursday, so maybe there was a conflict or something. I'll check with Shelley tomorrow to see if there was a reason why we did that. But no, the 11th.
So let's take a look at that, and assuming there isn't a reason, let's just move it to the 11th,
Which one are we talking about?
December of 2025.
Oh.
So
then
let's,
I'm sorry, Mr. Miko. The only other thing I would say is the annual board retreat always becomes a tricky one. So I know not everybody has their vacation plans yet, but just keep an eye on that one. If you know you're going on vacation, let us know. We typically, most of our administrative team is back by August, so it's a safer date for July since it's so late. But take a look, and if we can change it as is, but if you know right now you're going to be on vacation, let us know.
have we gotten the Browns schedule? Are there any
No.
Thursday night football games that we have to be concerned with?
Well, if they keep on playing like they are, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be like. And with
Super
commencement
Bowl or
moving
anything.
during the week, that's not a conflict in May, is it? That was my only other question. I couldn't find where, I knew we moved it during the week, but I couldn't. It is a conflict?
So should we move commencement?
Yeah, let me look at that.
Oh, yeah, May 26th, yeah. What time's our
And that's the
commencement?
retirement one too, so.
I think maybe it was it 6 o'clock, Dan? The commencement? I have to look back at my notes from Bill. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay, so we'll wrangle the December 4th meeting date. We'll be aware of the annual retreat in July, and we'll determine whether we need to wrangle the second May meeting.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we would have to look at is, because of the meeting schedule, you could always go to the 29th if you want to stay on Thursdays, or you could go on a Wednesday, before commencement. So if you have a preference, we can put that in the draft, or if you want to think about it.
So what was that first date you gave?
Say that again, George?
Was it May 29th?
Well, I'm saying with the May 22nd isn't going to work because of commencement, so two options would be to bump it to May 29th
Or May 21st?
or May 21st.
So the reason why I asked was, we have to approve the May
5-year
five-year forecast.
forecast.
And the state would like it a couple days before it's due, so maybe the 21st would work better if that works.
Is there any
Although I enjoyed
concern
the
with
additional time.
retirement?
Yeah, I'd prefer to do Ryan would prefer to do the retirements earlier, I think, because we do after school's out. I'm just wondering how many would come.
Right. So then the 21st would be better then, is what.
So let's pencil it in as the 21st, and
Yeah.
we'll verify if that's an issue for anyone.
Can we make sure we check school events as well? Because once we move them off Thursdays, we tend to conflict with other
Sure.
things those last weeks of school.
Yep.
Take a look at that.
Any other concerns looking at it right now? So we'll adopt that in January.
All right, thank you for the feedback.
Any others? Hearing none, we have Board of Education other reimbursable expenses. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City School Board of Education approves reimbursable expenses for Michelle Bissell as outlined in the exhibit. Polaris Career Center will reimburse the district 50% of approved expenses. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. This is reimbursement for OSBA convention. So thank you to Michelle for taking her responsibilities seriously and making the time to attend the convention. Any other questions or discussion? Take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Ms. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Abstain.
the motion carries. Reimbursable expenses, OSBA Capital Conference. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City School Board of Education approves reimbursable expenses for Laura Wolf-Hausum as outlined in the exhibit. Polaris Career Center will reimburse the district 50% of approved expenses. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? We thank Laura for taking her responsibilities and making the time to attend the conference. Any other questions? Take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Abstain.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Reimbursable expenses, Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves reimbursable expenses for Sharon Kilbane as outlined in the exhibit. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? We thank Mrs. Kilbane, we thank Sharon for taking her responsibilities seriously and making the time to attend. I will highlight that Laura and Michelle are members of Polaris' school board, so they shoulder half of the burden. Maybe next year, we'll figure out a way to get Sharon onto the Polaris board.
Okay.
Please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Ms. Cobain,
Abstain.
Mr. Miko.
Yes, and the motion carries. We do have meeting notification. We are setting the date of the organizational work session meeting as January 9th, 2025 at 7 PM in this room of the admin building. And we do have meeting notification. We do need to appoint a president pro tem for the 2025 organizational work session meeting. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate Sharon. I'll second. What?
Better study up on how to do
That ought
this.
to be a really fun meeting.
I am certain that Mrs. Bissell will teach Sharon everything she needs to know to be a great president pro tem. Are you willing to accept the honor and privilege?
Sure.
Action procedural, we appoint Sharon Kilbane as president pro tem for the 2025 organizational work session meeting.
I'll
I
play
would
hail
need
to
a
the
vote.
chief when
We
you
need
walk
to take a
in.
Do we need a vote?
So
Do I have a motion?
Ms. Stavcek motion, someone seconded.
second.
Sharon seconded it, so
Well,
we already
No,
have the
Laura.
motions.
Laura.
I'm
Laura
Laura.
seconded.
What did I say?
Sharon.
Oh,
All right, so Ms.
what
Stavcek,
I'm thinking, not what I'm saying.
Ms. Stavcek,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain.
Abstain? Or wait, do I vote for myself?
You can vote for yourself.
Okay, all right, yes.
I've been campaigning for this for 3 years now.
Mr. Miko.
Yes,
I'm playing hail to the chief when she walks in. I'm doing all of it.
Oh, boy.
and the motion carries. We do have reason for executive session on the topics of,
To prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, to consider the employment or discipline of a public employee, and to consider the purchase of property for public purposes.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Hold on, I lost that. There we go. Ms. Stavcek,
Yes.
Ms. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes?
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bissell.
Motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 9:20. We have no expectation of further business. This is our last meeting of the year. It is the holiday time, so I wish everyone a belated Happy Bodhi if you celebrate, Merry Christmas if you celebrate, and a Happy Hanukkah. Thank you for your attention, and have a good evening.